Hi everyone, it's Liam here from Rating the Races. So we're going to have a look back at some of the races at York and some of the horses that I'd like to highlight going forward that I think could be very interesting as bets. Obviously we had a decent York, started well with JM Jungle, ended nicely with Sabuska winning. We had winners in the middle, but talking about winners is irrelevant now. You want to know what's going to win future races. No point talking about, so-and-so won for us, so-and-so won for us, so-and-so won for us. That's pointless. Unless we really believe they can go and win again. And you want to know what horses are worth keeping an eye out for going forward. And that may well end up in my calculations for future bets. So we'll start off with the first race where I've written down, so I'm looking at my notes on a bit of paper here that I've also got, 3 horses that I want you to be interested in and look at. Go and watch their run, and be interested in next time out. They are, we'll go through them in finishing order. Democracy Dilemma, who was 4th. Now, he has gone a shade too fast again. He's clearly tricky to win with because I think he gets 5 furlongs and no further. I mean, if you took those 89 yards off, he would have probably placed. Don't know whether he'd have quite held on. But he wants the bare minimum trip. He wants good to firm ground, and he wants them not being able to pick up behind. Yes, he was in the right part of the draw, and he actually set up the race lovely for JM Jungle. But I do believe there is a win in this horse. And it wouldn't totally surprise me if we saw Democracy Dilemma back in September for this race. You can see this 5 furlong handicap, so those 89 yards would be off. It's 5 furlong handicap. It's not quite as good prize money, 30 grand, but that's still not to be sniffed at. And the fact that he's ran so well at York, you would imagine that's where he's going to go. I think he's going to, if he did turn up, I mean, he only went off, what did he go off? 11 to 1 this day. I could see him being single figures next time if similar rivals turn up. But he's definitely one that would interest me, and if there isn't anything that I think is either going to take him on or he's going to get essentially a very easy lead at the front, he would definitely be one that I'd be looking out for going forward. I won't talk about too much of the handicap marks because they are that's another video we're going to look at. I don't know what handicap mark happened with Democracy Dilemma. The second horse that I definitely want you to keep an eye out for is the winner of this race at York, Vintage Clarets. So Vintage Clarets is down to a winnable mark. Things didn't quite go to plan at York. So he'd won a race in September of last year, came back here, ran okay for 8th, actually finished 2nd on his side. He only got beat by Bergerac. And I imagine the handicap has dropped him. As I said, I'm not going to talk about the handicap marks. If he has, and he returns for that race next month, he would also be one that you definitely want to keep an eye out for. If he gets the draw, so obviously, what time was it? So last time it wasn't the final race of the day, the first race of the day. So you would know roughly, you'd have an idea about the draw already by that point. If he's in the right part of the track and able to follow the right horses, even if Vintage Clarets and Democracy Dilemma both ran in the race and they were drawn near each other, I could see Democracy Dilemma really setting it up for Vintage Clarets to come through late on. Being that he only finished 8th or 2nd in his group, he's likely to be a bigger price next time. And yeah, he went off 22 to 1. I can see him being 14s, 16s, 18s again next time if these type of horses turned up. But yeah, you can see that he won this race last year. I see no reason why they're not going to go back with Vintage Clarets. The third horse that caught my eye is Pocklington. Pocklington's only a 3-year-old. Started life winning novice events at Newcastle on the all-weather over 6. Then went to Newbury for a listed race, finished 5th behind Inisherin. I think 2nd and 3rd have done alright since. 4th was Malk, who's done okay. And then ended up in the Commonwealth Cup. Now, off the back of just 3 runs, and not really looking like a Commonwealth Cup horse, he didn't look good enough for a Group 1. He ran in a Group 1, and ran okay for a long way before getting tired late on and probably showing that he's not Group 1 class at this stage. Dropped into a handicap here and dropped in trip, went back down to 5 furlongs. That cost him a big chance, as did his draw. So he was drawn over this side, 21 of 22. Slowly away, and was always off the bridle, never got closer than his finishing position. And yet if you actually watch his finishing position, he's only finished 10th. If you'd gone another half a furlong, he would have been in the top 5. If you'd gone another furlong after that, up to 6 furlong, he would have been absolutely motoring. I don't think his handicap mark is right. I think there is a race in Pocklington off his handicap mark. I kind of feel it needs to be over 6 though. And I wonder whether they might go here for the Ayr Gold Cup. I think he'll get in. Up to 6 furlongs. Very, very unexposed. Almost the same sort of cavalry charge as they do at York as well. If he can keep up early, yeah, I think Pocklington could be very, very interesting in the Ayr Gold Cup. Now, obviously, we do have Rohan that we're hoping turns up in the Ayr Gold Cup, who finished 7th last year. I still really like him. If Pocklington also turns up, he would be the other one for me on the day. Just keep an eye on Pocklington, where he goes. I'd like to see them go up to 6. But they've got to go for a feature handicap with him. No point running in group races, in my opinion. No point running in a low-class handicap in terms of, a handicap worth 15, 20, 25 grand for the winner. Go and win a feature one with him. I really like him and think he could be very interesting in the Ayr Gold Cup. For connections that do love going to Scotland, the Oldroyd... Jeff Oldroyd, the trainer of this one? Yes, he is. Keep an eye out for Pocklington. Let's add them now to our NAGMI. Democracy Dilemma. Back to York. Over 5 furlongs. So he is added to our NAGMI. I also want to add... who was the other one? Vintage Claret. Back for a race he won in 2023. And then finally, Pocklington. Where's Pocklington? There he is. Ayr Gold Cup. Needs 5.5 plus. Big handicap in him. Okay, so they are my 3 from the first race of the day, the first race of the York Festival. We then move on to the 4:10 at York on the first day. It was the 2 mile stayers handicap, and there's 2 horses that I want to take out of this race, and I think both of them could end up in the same race as well. They are Tritonic and Knightswood. Now, I've been tweeting about Tritonic that he does not stay 2 miles. They've run him over 2.5. He didn't stay over 2.5 at Goodwood. Didn't stay over 2.5 at Ascot. 2 mile. Look at the last time he ran over a suitable trip, in my opinion. No. Yes. There we go. That was, in my opinion, the last time he ran over a suitable trip. He was 4th. And I believe it was actually in this race. I'm just very quickly looking on my other screen. It was indeed. Oh, we can actually see if we go here. He was 4th behind Post Impressionist, Keys Chorister and Enemy. Now, I think that was a good Old Borough Cup, to be fair. Tritonic was running off 100 that day. Now, I know before his run at York, he ran off 92. Anywhere around there, I imagine he might have gone up a pound or 2 for finishing 3rd at York. 93, 94, he would still be £6 lower than when finishing 4th in the Old Borough Cup. And it was a good Old Borough Cup. Post Impressionist was a good horse. Keys Chorister has been running in group races. Enemy has been running in group races. It was a really good run for Tritonic in the Old Borough Cup, and I'd love to see him return there this year off a lower mark, and I think he would go really close. So let's add him to our NAGMI for the Old Borough Cup. Old Borough Cup, 4th of 100 last year. And what this NAGMI does is it means I will get an email when they're due to run, as in the day before I'll receive an email. And also on the day I'll receive an email, and I'll be able to see that the pencil will have changed colour. So when I'm flicking through the races, it's easy to spot NAGMIs because of the colour of the pencil on the NAGMI column. The second horse that I think could also turn up in that race, and I would also be keen on, is Knightswood. Now, I selected Knightswood. He was my nap. He ran okay for 7th. One of our members actually pointed out on the video the record of the Johnsons at York is always so poor. And Charlie's not gone on from when Mark used to train the horses. They weren't great at York. You can see that Charlie doesn't have a great record at York either. I was kind of hoping that Knightswood was just too good for that, and you know, could even overcome that trainer bias. Probably didn't, but still, it ran well for a long way. You can see he traded at 2-1 in the run, so traded really short. And I feel that maybe he didn't quite get home either, because he came there travelling on the outside behind, I can't think who he was chasing. Looked like he was going to get involved and then didn't really pick up. And I just feel they might need to drop him back in trip. If they do, this race at Haydock should be a much better race for him. Let's just have a look, see if you can see Charlie's got a record here. It wasn't great then. I think it's got a little bit better at Haydock. In actual fact, let's just quickly do a check. I'm just going to pause the video whilst I load it up. Still not amazing, to be honest. 7.94%. Maybe he doesn't particularly go well at Haydock either. There's definitely a race in Knightswood, but maybe it's not this old Borough Cup. But that just makes it easier for us. We would be more keen on Tritonic in the old Borough Cup than Knightswood. Maybe Knightswood goes back to Goodwood. I know there's a 2-mile race at Goodwood that he could potentially run in. I do want to put them both in our NAGMI still. I will talk. Oh, I've already done Tritonic. Let's do Knightswood. Trainer woeful at York, maybe not Haydock. Haydock either. And create the NAGMI. So, as I said, I'll get a notification next time Knightswood is going to run. I do still like the horse. I'm definitely not giving up on him. Moving on to, was this the next day? The 3 o'clock, the Clipper handicap over just shy of a mile at York, where we had Holloway Boy. He ran a really good race for 3rd. He's very frustrating, isn't he? Can't seem to get a win into him. Travelled really, really strongly again, and then didn't find as much as you were hoping. I think the key here, for me, was the track or position bias. So Thunder Run pretty much made all of the running. Mersky, Holloway Boy, James McHenry, Aragon Castle, they were all relatively prominent all the way. The biggest disappointment out of it was Elner Jim, who looked like he was actually in the perfect position in terms of where all the others were that have done well, but faded. And there's 2 in this race that I'm going to be interested in going forward. The first one, I'm going to give another chance to Blue For You. I do think there's another race that Blue For You can come back for. It's not this race. I think there's another race for Blue For You, but we will know that one when it comes to York. I think that's where Blue For You will be heading again next time. But the one that I definitely want to add to our NAGMI, Mr. King. So this was his first run for Ian Jardine after previously being trained by, I think it was J.R. Lyons. Let's just have a look. It was indeed J.R. Lyons. And J.R. Lyons actually got a win into the horse over a mile. It also won over a mile and 2. And they'd started the horse off over a mile. So a mile is probably the bare minimum this horse wants. From a held up position, which didn't suit in this race, first run for the new stable, finished 7th. I think there's a handicap in this one, and I would like to see the horse go up in trip. And I think this is very interesting, because I just think the handicapper maybe doesn't have the right mark in the UK. Maybe in Ireland the horse they'd started to get the handicap mark right, but in the UK or in England the handicap mark for Mr. King, in my opinion, is not right based on this run. I thought it was a really eye-catching run. Left it far too late. where do I think they could go? Why would you not go for the Cambridgeshire? So it's up to 1 mile. It would obviously suit in terms of the track and the trip. I believe even the winner, let's just have a look. The winner had won at York. The winner had come from York, last year's winner. And I generally like that. I like horses that, if a horse runs well at York, it can then go and win a race at Newmarket. I kind of think a lot of horses can do that then. There's a lot of horses that run well at certain courses and then also run well at other courses, and I kind of look for that even in my analysis. I look for, so as you can, we'll look at, I'm making up some numbers here, but say I was looking at race at Newmarket, 5 of the last 6 winners had previously been to Nottingham and run well at Nottingham, and I'd be like, well, Nottingham is a track that clearly they if they run well there, they generally run well at Newmarket, and I kind of use that as an angle. And I think Mr. King has clearly ran well at York, and if he'd got going and got a clear run a little bit earlier, I think he would have finished closer. And yeah, I think he could be very interesting for the Cambridgeshire. I don't think anyone's mentioned him at all, so I imagine we could get a decent price if he does go as well. And the fact that he went off a massive price on UK debut, he went off 50 to 1. You probably get about that again for the Cambridgeshire. But he's definitely one that caught my eye. Stayed on over 1 mile from a position that didn't suit position bias. So as I said, the horses at the front stayed there. The horses that were further back stayed there. Mr. King was one of only a couple that actually made ground. And yeah, if he goes up in trip, he doesn't have to go up far, just to 1 mile for a Newmarket. I think he could be very interesting, Mr. King. Moving on to the 5:20 at York, the Fillies Handicap. Now, this is a race that I think is worth keep coming back to. The right horses were at the front. So, why do I say that? Well, first of all, if we look at the R figures, for example, the highest R figure, 144.4, was 5th. The front 4, I think, were all the right horses in terms of Alpha Kellenich. You can see the 1, 2, 3 on our ratings, just in the wrong order. RTR 4 was up there. Elim, who was the unexposed 4-year-old, and Aquacel had ran a good 143.7, and Pinafore, who was my third best. I kind of feel that the right horses were at the front and the right horses were at the back. And with that in mind, I feel it's a race that will work out well going forward. I think there's a couple that I'd probably be most keen on, and both of those are the 4-year-olds. So you can see it was generally dominated by 3-year-olds. 3-year-old fillies. The first 4-year-old was Elim. Now, Elim was given far too much to do, finished really strongly, could definitely find a race, maybe not taking on 3-year-olds. If 3-year-olds are excluded, if it's a 4-year-old and older race, or maybe next season against, early on in the season where there are no 3-year-olds taking the older horses on, that could be where we see Elim in running a even better race. But she's still very unexposed herself. And the other one is Pinafore. I thought her effort was decent. She finished 7th, beaten by, as I said, 5 3-year-olds that maybe were just their allowances were too much at that stage. And also I thought Ryan Moore gave Pinafore a ride of, if you don't win, or if you're not going to win, don't bother. He kind of, as soon as he got, he didn't pick up and close down Misinformation, who was leading at the time, I thought Ryan gave her a very easy time of things, maybe with the future in mind. I don't have anywhere where I think they might go at this stage, but I do think this whole race is worth keep coming back to. If you end up looking at a horse and this is the form line from this race, particularly those top 7, top 8, I think it's a good form line. Moving on to the 4:10, the Fillies Handicap. This was on the Friday, I think. I think there was a ride in this race that was really disappointing. And I think they was in it to try and set it up for another horse. That horse, for me, was Shamozzle. I thought Shamozzle was given a terrible ride. And interestingly, you can see that considering the horse came into the race off the back of a penalty, drifted all day, went out to 25.74 on the exchanges, traded relatively short, traded 11s, as turned into the lead, turned into the straight in the lead. But when she turned in, Eddie Greatrex, for some reason, pulled the horse and went down the middle of the track. Throughout the meeting, the far side had been the place to be. He's in the lead, and for some reason, he comes down the middle of the track. I think it's because they thought their other horse, Our Nude, they'd given Our Nude a lovely run through, and that was the one that was going to win the race. You can see Our Nude was only 6-1 that day, was what, fourth favourite, third favourite? Full third favourite that day. Third favourite. I think they thought Our Nude would win that, having been given a lovely run through by Schmozzle. So, with that in mind, I kind of want to go, when Schmozzle's in a race to win it herself, I think she'll be interesting. And so she is one I'm going to keep an eye out for when she maybe drops in class, when in a race that she is trying to win. Could be interesting. I just feel it was a really, really poor ride to come down the centre of the track, and I just feel that they might have opened the door thinking, right, Our Nude's going to come through now, and we've set that up beautifully for Our Nude. Really, really disappointing run. A ride for me. We'll move on to the 225 at York. The 1 mile 5 Melrose. Obviously next year some of these could be running in the Ebor. I think the horse to take out of this is Master Builder. So we were actually on the equator. I thought we had it, about 2 furlongs to go. Just got run down by Table Talk. Go and watch the run through of Master Builder. The horse has only had the 3 runs. Didn't get a clear run a couple of times, even when it looked like, okay, he's now after Table Talk and the equator. He then had to switch again down to go down the inside behind another horse that was falling back into him. Master Builder will get further. I think he's very, very interesting going forward. I have found a race. I imagine we might see him in this. It's back over the same trip. It's for 3-year-olds. I mean, it looks fairly obvious in terms of where they could go. It's worth 51 grand as well. But I kind of wouldn't mind seeing the horse run in, not the Ebor, the Cesarewitch trial. Go up in trip to the Cesarewitch trial and just see how you get on. I mean, they started out over 1 mile and 2. They then went 1 mile and 2. They then went 1 mile and 4. They're now up to 1 mile and 6. They're progressing so quick that 2 mile, 2.5 mile may well be within this horse's reach. And yeah, that Cesarewitch would be a race that I'd be quite keen to see Master Builder in. However, I do believe they'll be coming back for the 1 mile and 6 race at York. Or Cesarewitch. Next month. I think that is where we might well see next month. No, it's in October actually. The William Hill Finale handicap. It's worth 51 grand, so you can understand why they might target that. Couple more to go. Starting off looking at the Ebor itself, won by Magical Zoe, who had previously placed in a county hurdle. Last year's winner, Absurd, went on to win the county hurdle as well. That county hurdle is a race that certainly can throw up horses in the Ebor. Now, I've got a bit of a throw out one here. I think there could be a feature handicap hurdler in this race. A feature handicap hurdle winner in this race in the Ebor. And that was Hip Hop de Loire. Now, you can see what I've put already. Hugely eye-catching in Ebor, can win a feature handicap maybe over hurdles. Now, I think Hip Hop de Loire, with a clear run, would have really challenged Magical Zoe. And being that he's with Willie Mullins, you know Willie's going to find something. But the horse had already been out over hurdles. Went to Galway on August the 3rd, finished second. Beaten by another Willie Mullins horse in Jack Finbar. And I think they initially were trying to suggest that that was a disappointing run. They were disappointed to have been beaten by Jack Finbar. I don't think they'll be disappointed. I think Jack Finbar is, he's reasonable himself. But I think that this Ebor was probably the target for Hip Hop de Loire, and they were more than happy winning the race at Galway with Hip Hop de Loire, with Jack Finbar. You got to remember, Jack Finbar went off the 11-4 favourite. Hip Hop de Loire went off 3-1. I think they knew that they weren't going to win that day. But I think, even Jack Finbar's flat form was pretty decent. He was 105 on the flat. They've got 2 horses there that I think could be very interesting over hurdles this season. 104, 101, sorry. Last seen running off Last seen running off 105. Well, some people say you add about 30. That's 135. We're already into feature handicap class with that. And if you say there's more to come with being trained by Willie Mullins, we could go 140, 145 sort of mark. Or if both of those ended up about that, they would both end up in something like the county hurdle. I want you to keep your eye on Hip Hop de Loire. Being beaten in a maiden, wait to see what they do with it next time. If they can try and... It wouldn't even surprise me if Hip Hop de Loire ended up in a graded race next time over hurdles, got beat, ended up running in the county hurdle off the back of 3 runs or 4 runs. They obviously need 4 runs. 4 runs, got a handicap mark, turns up in the county hurdle and wins that. Hip Hop de Loire was incredibly unlucky in the Ebor. There'll be a plan for him over hurdles. And the final race that I want to talk about is the Sky Bet finale, where we ended with a lovely 1-2 for our ratings, which was great to see. 1-2 for our analysis, 1-2 for William Knight and I think it's Kennet Syndicate, with Sabuska beating Dual Identity. Now, the unlucky horse in the race was Rono, the horse who finished 5th. Didn't get a clear run a couple of times as well. Would have gone closer. I don't know whether he would have beaten the front 2, but on my analysis that I felt they were really well handicapped, those 2. Even if Rono had finished 3rd, I would have gone, well, that was a really good run then, because got beat by 2 well handicapped horses. And I'm hoping that Rono returns for this race here. A 1-2 handicap back at York. Now, the trainer of Rono, Ray Craggs, seems to like to send the horses in sequences of runs. What I mean by that is, if we have a look, he went to Hamilton. No, he didn't. Newcastle, Southall, Newcastle, 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 Redcar, York, 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 York. I think it'll be York again. And he seems to do that a lot with this horse. It runs it in sequences. You just keep staying at the same place if you can. And the fact that there's a suitable race for him, it's not the best of prize money, but it's certainly a race that he could go and run a big race in with a clear run. That's all he needs, is a clear run this time. There is also this race at Sandown that actually Dual Identity won. Dual Identity was 2nd in the Sky Bet finale behind Sabuska. That could be where they send. Both of them, Dual Identity and Rono. But I think we might see Rono running at York. So I want to put Rono into our Nagmi as well. Eye-catching 5th. Would have been 3rd or better. Behind around our 2 bets in the race. So for me, that's just saying, I'm saying I picked the right 2. Look at the next one. Who's the next best? Who else has performed above themselves? And I think that was Rono. So there are just some thoughts from York. If I had to give you one to take out of the whole meeting, I would probably go for... I really like a lot of them. I would probably go Pocklington. I'm gonna go for 2. Pocklington and Hip Hop de Loire. They are your 2. But I do think you should add all of those that I've just mentioned into your RTR Nagmi.